I am here to tell you a little bit about recruiting. And the first thing I will say is I know you guys all hate recruiters. It's okay, I know you do, because we spam you and email you and try to entice you to come to our new exciting opportunity, right? So what I wanted to do was kind of tell you a little bit about the science of recruiting. And there actually is a science to it. Not all of us are just looking for keywords on websites. So this talk kind of originated, I think back in December or January. I was actually talking with Ben and a few of our engineers, and we were talking about, basically I was lamenting how engineers hate recruiters, you know. And they're like, well, you know, what's so difficult about it? So I started telling them about some of the psychology behind recruiting and what makes a good fit in a company, and why people succeed and don't succeed in different environments. And both Ben and one of our other engineers, Josh, were like, wow, like that's actually kind of interesting. You should talk about that at a conference. So here I am. So basically, first off, I want to say part of this, about 80% of this is kind of accepted mentalities or thoughts and opinions in the recruiting community, and about 20% of it's just my opinion through things that I've experienced in the last couple of years recruiting. So basically, the science of hiring for developers, looking for natural talents. To kind of kick this off, I want to explain the difference between skills, between knowledge, and between talents. So skills are kind of the how-to of anything you're going to do. So learning the syntax of a language would be a skill. Knowledge is something you can learn, whether through being taught, it's factual knowledge, you can read it in a book, you can read it on the internet, or through something that you have experienced in your career or your life. And then talents, kind of the natural talents, are what we like to define as the reoccurring thoughts and patterns in behavior. So it's kind of it's not the second nature of anything, it's the first nature. It's what people gravitate towards naturally. And so kind of breaking that down a little bit further, there are three kinds of talents that I like to focus on in recruiting. The first one is striving talents. What motivates someone? What gets them out of bed in the morning? And what's going to keep them going when things get tough in a job or whatever? The second kind is thinking talents. How do you process information? How do you problem solve? Things of that nature. And the third one is relating talents. How do you relate to the people around you? So all of these together kind of make who a person is and how they function on a daily basis. Again, those reoccurring patterns of thoughts and talents. And the reason this is important in recruiting is because skills are great. Skills, everyone needs to have skills, and you can have the perfect resume. But how many of you have worked with someone who's the most brilliant programmer you've ever worked with, and they just did not fit? Like they just didn't work out. And that's kind of the situation that a lot of people run into, depending on, are you a small startup company and you're trying to kind of get those anchor people to build a team, or are you a huge company and have different dynamics that you're trying to hire for? So, when you're looking at talents, there are, people will have more than one set of talents. You're not just only going to process information linearly if you're talking about thinking talents. But everybody has kind of those prevalent talents that, again, are those natural patterns of thoughts and behaviors. So this is all well and good. I'm sure you're thinking, well, how do we go about actually finding those? And there are kind of two things that you're going to look for in this. The things that kind of indicate a natural talent, and you can look for these through interview questions. You can look through these, through reference checks on someone. You can also do different assessments, which if you guys have questions about later, I'm happy to answer those. But when you're looking through these, you're looking for two things basically, or the two easiest ways to figure out a natural talent. The first is rapid learning. If someone kind of picks something up really quickly on their own, usually it kind of indicates that there's something there that allowed them to pick that up faster. Also, it's kind of a hard thing to explain, but have you guys ever like been working on something and like lost time? You know, you're working on something and all of a sudden you look up and 5 hours have gone by and you didn't even realize because you were so engrossed in what you were working on. Usually that's an indicator of a natural talent in what you're working on there. So those are kind of the things that you're going to look for when you're hiring natural talents. And again, the reason that all of this is important is because if you don't have a situation where someone is kind of fulfilled in all their talents, essentially the inverse is going to be how they're going to feel. So if you're someone who has a specific way of relating with people and the situation you're in does not fit that situation or does not fit your talent, you're likely going to feel either alienated or smothered by the people around you. And so it's kind of looking for that fit of all the talents combined and how does this all fit together. So it's basically trying to look at that whole picture and look at what you as a company provide in terms of motivation for someone, how they're going to have to process information, and how they're going to have to relate. So the different types of situations, if you look at like a salesperson, and the way they're going to have to relate to people will be very, very different than how you as an engineer might have to relate to people. So all of this kind of combined, I wanted to just talk pretty quickly about actually a case study that we did at Living Social with the Hungry Academy, which, how many of y'all are familiar with the concept of the Hungry Academy? A few? Okay, great. So basically, what we did was try to interview in a way so we could predict someone's ability to succeed in a program where we taught them how to develop, whether or not they'd had any development experience in the past at all. So career changers, people who had never even written a line of code, how do you determine if that person can succeed if we give them the tools, the skills and experiential knowledge to become a developer? So you're basically looking at these natural talents and trying to figure out what the fit is going to be. So what we did was basically looked at the 3 different talents we're going to have available. So a lot of that ties back to, we tied it back to anyways, the Living Social core values, and said how is someone going to relate and how is someone going to be motivated in this situation. And then we kind of separated out the thinking talents and had a different type of assessment for that to figure out, will they be able to process information in a way that will make them a successful problem solver when it comes to developing. So we went through a long process. I'm sure some of you guys, I know some of our Hungry Academy people are here, and I think maybe 1 or 2 of you may have applied as well. But we actually did like video interviews and then had people come in and do problem solving with us to figure out if they were kind of the pattern of thoughts and behaviors that we were looking for. So, I'm going to take a drink. So basically, kind of getting back to this, are these patterns predictable of their future success? When you're looking at recruiting, you want to see examples of their past performance. So by performance, I don't mean how well they did a job, but what their kind of natural patterns were in the past. And that was a lot of how we went about interviewing with these candidates to figure out how they might perform in the situation that they were applying to at Living Social. So neuroscience suggests, and with the caveat, I am not a neuroscientist, that by the time someone's in their mid-teens, their talents, essentially, their personality and characteristics are pretty much set, as much as they're going to, you're not going to change that much. So if you're looking on a scale of 1 to 10 and you're considering someone for a sales position, if they are a 5 on how outgoing they are, you're not going to get them to a 9. You might choose, move a little bit in one way or the other, but it's not going to be a drastic change. So again, that goes back to trying to find someone who will fit the whole aspect of the role, understanding you can't expect someone to come in and change drastically to fit the environment that you have. So I'm not going to talk too much about the Hungry Academy because I know that they're doing a panel tomorrow, but so basically we created this process of determining and uncovering their natural talents. We did it through an interview process. It was kind of the I guess the quicker way to set that up, as I mentioned, you can also use assessments for that, but looked at essentially how they were going to relate with instructors, with other engineers. We actually had them do a paired logic problem, so kind of in the same line as like paired programming, only more of an LSAT type question. And we had them interact with both male and female engineers, interact with different people through the organization during their interview process, and move them through a pretty rapid process just to kind of see how they handled the fast pace and kind of the barrage of stuff coming at them in what ended up being about an hour and a half of interview to every person. So, so anyways, I mean, kind of this case study, we actually just finished up the first class of the Hungry Academy. I'm happy to announce that everybody was offered a position with Living Social, so we now have 24 new engineers at Living Social. But so basically this was kind of our attempt at, again, uncovering those natural talents. So it's kind of the bulk of what I had today. I don't know if there are any questions or anything else you guys would like to know about this, but how many of you guys are involved in the hiring process at your companies, by the way? All right. And out of you guys, how many of you have worked with, that person that just, kind of wasn't a fit? Like, have been in that situation where you hired someone and it just, yeah. So you guys know what I'm talking about, right? All right, great. So were there any questions or anything? Yeah?
Question. So, when trying to evaluate how they relate to folks, folks can kind of hold it together in the interview usually.
Sure.
So what do you do to kind of break down what you're saying their first kind of reaction is, their initial response?
Yeah, so that goes into a lot of behavioral interviewing. Oh, yeah, absolutely. So basically his question was, when it comes to relating talent, since most people can kind of put on their game face in an interview process, how do you uncover those relating talents? And that's a great question. It kind of goes back to, as I mentioned, behavioral interviewing, which becomes the kind of science behind the recruiting side of things. So past performance is an indicator of future performance. And so what you want to do is ask them a question about a situation that they might be in your company, and figure out kind of what their natural reaction was. So I'm sure most of you guys can probably determine if you feel like you're getting that canned interview answer. But if you're actually asking them for an example of a time when they were in a situation and had to respond to it, you're more likely to get that honest answer of how they responded and what that talent is. You can ask multiple questions, multiple situations, but your goal is to figure out what is their go-to response to something. What is their go-to, and when you talk about relating, that's not just how they talk to someone, it's, who do they trust, or do they trust right off the bat or not? Are they cynical when it comes to their interactions with someone, or do they typically trust right off the bat? In that situation, if you're talking about like an IRS auditor, it behooves them in their job to be cynical, correct? In other situations, it behooves someone to trust more right off the bat. So it's not just are they going to, it's going to be who do they confront about things, and when do they kind of back down, and that's kind of the relating thing. So it's a lot about asking questions about specific situations and trying to get their honest account of what happened in that. And kind of in that line of thinking of asking interview questions, one thing I will say is always trust their unaided response. Like their top of mind answer is usually going to be the one you want to go with. So if they have to spend some time thinking about an answer, you might want to be prepared with a few more questions or different scenarios where you can kind of get them where they have that top of mind answer for you. So, any other questions?
So you're
sorry.
Going to teach us techniques for fooling the recruiter?
No, because that makes my job so much harder. He asked if I was going to teach techniques for fooling the recruiter. No, not today. All right, I saw a hand up back here. Yes?
How do you get feedback and metrics in the organization after you hire the engineers to assess how your recruiting process is going, and how do you make it better?
Sure, that's a great question. It's something we're actually actively doing at Living Social right now. The question is, how do you basically assess and put metrics to how effective your interview process is in hiring someone who matches that profile that you're looking for? Is that correct? Yep. Yeah. So basically, and I've done this at another organization as well, so I can give a few examples. You have to figure out what again, what that fit is, what you're looking for, what those natural talents are. And it's kind of that situation of bringing everyone back to those core principles every time you review that person. So, the ideal situation is to, you keep that interview feedback and you see, okay, this is what our impression of this person was. And then at a 3-month review or at a 6-month review, you see, are they still performing to these, and how are they, where were we maybe slightly off on this and where were we closer to it? We actually have, within Living Social and at another organization I've been at, even tracked the effectiveness of our interviewers on this as well when trying to determine where we were doing a good job and where we weren't. And so kind of the simplest, version of that is saying if we're looking at this person to assess their thinking talents, when they give us a thumbs up at more of a technical stage, when we bring them in for the interview process and they meet with the rest of the team, are they still in line? Like, is everyone in agreement, or are they kind of off in that? So that's one way to do it, but the best way, I mean, the key to measuring anything is, and kind of assessing that, is figuring out what you want to measure and what they need to fit and how you intend to measure that. So, you want to design that review around assessing, are they relating to people in a way that is that fits with our culture, that fits with the team? Are they processing the information that we have here, the problems that we need them to solve, in a way that's effective and efficient for what we need to accomplish? And again, also with the striving talents, do they have the sense of urgency that we're looking for? Are we setting up a situation for them where they feel motivated and want to get out of bed and want to show up to do what we're asking them to do? So, does that answer your question? Great. Yes?
I was wondering, with respect to technical talent, do you have an example of like a good way to assess technical talent versus a bad way, a contrast?
I do. So the question was, in regards to technical talent, is there a way to assess that, or can I suggest a way, I guess, to assess that?
A good versus a bad contrast.
Yeah, a good versus a bad. So in hiring, there's several different ways you can assess it. You can ask technical questions. You can give them coding challenges. You can, like what we did for the Hungry Academy, we actually had them just solve a problem where they would have to process information the same way our engineers typically do. So there's lots of ways you can do it. What you want to make sure is that it's indicative of what they're going to have to do when they're working with you. And I think that's where a lot of organizations maybe kind of miss the mark a little bit. Someone can have all the skills and knowledge in the world about software development, but if they don't actually technically process information the way you want to, they're not going to solve the problems you need them to solve in an effective way. So that's the best thing. I mean, at Living Social, we utilize a coding problem, and it's as much trying to figure out if they can it's an easy problem. It's not difficult. What we want to see is, do they process the information that we want them to? And are they including things that are very core to who we are as a development team? So I don't want to give too many specific examples because then I'm giving away what we're looking for in the coding challenge. But it's are they including things where we want them to? Are they referencing different ideas that are kind of core to how we develop? And our developers actually very kindly created that for me to use. So, yes?
So then have you found that whiteboard coding problems are in fact a good way to assess an engineer's eventual technical performance?
Yeah, I mean, it works for some organizations and not for others. It works pretty well for us. At Living Social, we actually have our engineers do a coding test for us before they even come in for an interview, and then our engineers talk through it over the phone with them to get a better idea of their thought processes. And then when they come in, we actually have them do a paired coding exercise with one of our engineers as well. I think it is a great way to uncover the thinking talents if the problem is indicative of what they're going to solve when they're working with you. And I'm sorry, I just realized I forgot to repeat his question. He asked if whiteboarding problems were actually a good way to, or a good practice in the interview process. Yeah, have we found one? Yeah. So we do both kinds. With the paired programming exercise, it's as much a it's a test on their relating talents as well as their problem solving, because we're seeing how do they interact with our engineers? Can they take suggestions on their work? Are they able to incorporate other people's ideas, or are they kind of a staunch, this is the one way to do it? So there's many things you can learn from the whiteboarding exercises. But yes, we do use them, and we found, like I said, the two different ones that work pretty well for uncovering the talent that we're looking for. So, yes?
For the
Great. So his question was, when it comes to the values interview part of things, how do you kind of make it more objective and take that subjective, this is what I think part way out of it, and kind of calibrate that interview? There's two different things that we've done. First is education of the interviewers, and basically talking through, so these are our values, and talking through, this is what we see as an indicator of this value. Some of that, I've done several trainings with some of our engineers, and some of that is, this is what we as a corporate entity say, and a lot of it has been the engineers coming back to me and saying, well, in our engineering team, this is actually kind of more of how we would see it. So it's kind of that education and making sure everyone's on the same page. For the Hungry Academy, we specifically actually created a rubric that they followed and said, here's the value, and here are the things that could indicate, the level. And we literally broke it down. So we said, in the value of make strong moves, which is one of our values, it's basically being bold and unafraid to make suggestions and try new things. We basically gave them ideas of, since these are not technical people, since a lot of these candidates have never written code, these are the things that might indicate that they're willing to make strong moves. They're willing to kind of go against the grain or make these suggestions. And so it's a great way to standardize it. There's always that walking that line of like, are you making it too standard where you're kind of losing the content? And that's a line that you walk. But yes, there's definitely ways to kind of take that subjectivity out of it. If you guys are interested, or if anyone has more, I actually have some books that are on behavioral interviewing that I can suggest that kind of talk about, again, making that a much more objective process in the interviews. So, yes?
I was wondering what, if anything, surprised you during the Hungry Academy interview process?
That's a good question. I guess I can talk to this since the people who are speaking tomorrow weren't in the recruiting side of things. I guess for one thing that surprised us is that we were shocked at how many good candidates that we had. We thought it would actually be a lot simpler to narrow down those talents, and we assumed maybe we would bring in 30, 40 people for 24 positions. When it came down to it, we had 560 candidates that met the basic qualifications we were looking for, basic, employable, things that we were looking for. And we ended up bringing in, I'm thinking off the top of my head here, I think it was 87 people for face-to-face interviews for 24 positions. So, we created this rubric, and we had all these things. We're like, this is going to make it really easy. We'll go through these videos, and we'll basically have our class, right? And then we ended up having 3 days where we brought in about just under 30 people each day, and put them through speed dating interview. So that was, I think, one of the most surprising things, was just how many people actually met our qualifications of this is someone who would culturally fit into this and who could succeed and survive in the environment we're creating for them here. So. I didn't say what your question was. I'm so bad at this. Sorry. He asked if there's anything I was surprised about in the Hungry Academy recruiting process. Yes, back in the back?
Do you notice a difference in the demographics of the people that you hire or look at qualifications for this process compared to perhaps a more standard process?
Actually, so the question was, was there anything surprising about the demographics for the Hungry Academy versus our normal hiring practices? Surprisingly, there was not any difference. We hired, in the group, there were 4 girls out of 24 people, and that's actually pretty standard with the demographics of our engineering team. I think it's just slightly higher. But we actually, it was kind of right in line. We were hoping that we would have more female applicants, and it kind of fell in line with the standard of what we see for our normal applicant pool. We are working now more with some groups that work with training girls and ladies for software development. So working with Rails Girls, will actually be hosting their first DC-based event in September. We also work with DC Web Women and trying to focus on really bringing more focus on diversity in the engineering world. So, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Did that diversity also apply like age-wise? Was there a difference in the ages that you were seeing?
Yeah. So the question was, did that diversity also apply to age groups? And it did. The youngest person we had apply was actually, I believe, 16 and still in high school. And the oldest person we had apply was actually in their 60s. So where I think typically what we see is engineers who are kind of a little bit, I shouldn't talk about, we're not supposed to talk about age as recruiters, so you have to forgive me. My nature is to not talk about it. But in terms of age, you know, a lot of the developers we see are kind of from their mid-20s to about, you know, their 40s. And it was surprising. The bulk of the candidates were still kind of in that range, but there are definitely some more outliers that we found, which was encouraging to us because, you know, that is, I think, obviously it encourages kind of diversity in thought as well when you have those different backgrounds. And I guess in terms of just diversity for the candidate pool, I will mention this. We had, you know, people who were right out of college for computer science and not computer science, complete career changers who had done marketing and legal stuff, you know, like not even near the realm of technology. We had people who were already Rails engineers who just felt they could benefit from, you know, what we would be teaching. We had people who were .NET or Java engineers who wanted to learn the technology. It was kind of anyone you could possibly imagine. We had a very broad applicant pool. So, any other questions? Yes?
As you begun to measure the effectiveness of your interviewing process,
Mm-hmm.
are there practices that you thought were useful before that you just basically dropped? What are they?
I don't know. So the question was, as we've measured our interview process, are there practices that we have kind of begun to drop? I think, I don't know if there are practices we've just completely done away with. What we have done is refined our process so it was more efficient. So there are fewer people involved in the process now. We've refined how we get the feedback from the interviewers to make an effective decision. We've also kind of changed in our process at what point in the process do we decide which team they're actually interviewing for, where they might go in the organization. So those are some of the changes that we have made. But you know, have we completely done away with anything? No, we've actually added some stuff, including the coding exercise and the challenge on the front end, the coding challenge on the front end. So, anything else? I think I'm getting booted off. So, all right, thank you guys. Appreciate it.